Welcome to Until the Tea Runs Out. What are you drinking today? I am Ansley Ashe. You are?
I am Guilfoyle, but everyone calls me Jen. I'm drinking a chai latte, but I'm already half done with it, so I'm going to put it to the side so that I don't finish it really quickly.
Yeah, and I have a raspberry tea today. So
I was like, I
um
should make something else because I had brought that on my walk this morning because I did a walk, and then I was like, I could, or I could just, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
it's only been forever since Jen and I have talked to each other. So she got sick.
'Cause-
We were just talking about how it is Maycember.
And we
Um
need to explain Maycember for those that don't have kids.
yeah.
Maycember is like December with all the craziness of school stuff, field trips, Mother's Day, recitals, concerts, etc. But
All that.
without all the joy of presents
Yeah,
and
we
actual
don't
parties.
like at the end of December, what you get is Christmas. If you're a Christian, you get Christmas, or just secular Christian. You get Christmas. It's a really big deal here. And so like you get gifts, right? You get gifts under your tree for
Although
like as you're
technically Mother's Day is coming up this weekend, and theoretically we should get gifts. Theoretically,
and what you get is, poorly done breakfast in bed and some handmade card that was cute when your kid was 4, but when they're 14, you're like, that's just not the same kid. I'm gonna need a little bit more effort on your part. Yeah.
little bit, just that much more. No, no,
So
no,
we
no.
actually do have a topic for today. It's not just
We
gonna
do,
be us.
and like if you saw, like I called it setting the setting. And I thought it was a fantastic idea by Ansley because, like, I'm not gonna lie, I've been brain dead for like the last like month. So,
So like, well, every once in a while I have one good idea that comes through. Okay,
so
so
wait. So like, I wanted to like preface this with like, this is going to be, I think, geared towards authors, but it is not a bad thing for readers to be listening to and understanding. And my 3D printer is about to sing at me.
we'll have a celebration. It means it's done.
It is. I'm making my own Mother's Day thing because my husband doesn't know how to use the 3D printer.
So yeah, I was gonna say, so if you are one of the people who live streams with me regularly, last week you know that Kaylin and I talked about The Residence, which is which this Netflix show has a very famous setting in the White House, in the residence part of the White House. And I was in the middle of watching the show. Jen was talking to me about how she read, this is not the book, but it is the current Agatha Christie I just finished up. And Agatha Christie has a very famous setting in her most famous, most well-sold book, And Then There Was None, where it's a standalone novel where all of the suspects are on an island together, and there's a storm and they can't get off, and then everybody starts dying off one by one.
Well,
Hence the
and it's
title.
kind of like a classic thing, so much so that like other things have taken from that, right? Like you see that
Right. Yeah, it's so
almost as a
classic.
trope now.
Yeah, and like it's the invention of the trope. And so that got me thinking, because she talked about how she had seen it or read it, and I was thinking about how Agatha Christie did this. And one of the there's a YouTube out there. Brandon Sanderson sometimes teaches at Brigham Young University a master's of writing, creative writing, novel writing, which basically now that Nano is defunct, that's all we're gonna say about that. But he did say, like, he took a course semester, and in order to write a novel, you were supposed to do 50,000 words. And one of his lectures, which I have seen up on YouTube, he talks about how he thinks that young authors don't take enough risks in their settings. And he has very famously took one in Mistborn.
Mhm.
So this is kind of like that, like Agatha Christie, that closed circle. Nothing could be more closed than its tiny island that you can't get off of, right?
Yeah.
Um, Mistborn, like the mist is like a literally, like this thing that interacts back and forth. The
Well,
resident,
actually, it's interesting because I've actually heard like a a um a thing for writers is to treat your setting like a character,
yes,
and having
and
as much detail as you would have for a character for your setting.
I would say, like, the residents on Netflix definitely followed this advice. It's a fantastic show. If you haven't seen it and you have Netflix, go watch it. Like, just go watch it. It's not like it hasn't stayed in the top 10. So I was thinking, because when Jen was talking about her Detective Tim, whom I love, and Shutdown Syntax, So if you're not already on her Substack, go to our Substack. You can read everything that she has put up on there about it so far. So like, yeah, I was curious as to how setting played for her and where she got her inspiration for her setting was. And we're going to talk about again the big intersection.
But I also wanted to say, like, so like you were talking about those instances, but also like, and like this is half visual media, but also like in books. So like when we were talking about it, and I was on my walk this morning before this, I was thinking about it, and one of my favorite um things, especially when it comes to like, let's say, children's movies, which are a big thing, is um something that can make or break some children's movies is like the setting. And How to Train Your Dragon, which a lot of people know is like one of my literal, like my favorite franchises of all time. Something that made the movie special was that they imbued this wonder um for all ages in the setting, right? Like you got this amazing, like the dragon ride, like when he's first like learning to ride Toothless and stuff, and he's going around the island and the rock stacks and stuff. But it even starts the movie, and I want to read part of the monologue because the opening monologue is actually something that you would kind of see in books, and I also have the first book with me too because they're slightly different. um but, like, I feel like the opening monologue did such an incredible job of, like, setting the setting without you knowing anything, because it's the first 5 seconds of the movie, and it starts with, "This is Burke. It's 12 days north of Hopeless and a few degrees south of freezing to death. It's located solidly on the meridian of misery. My village, in a word, sturdy. It's been here for 7 generations, but every single building is new. We have fishing, hunting, and a charming view of the sunsets. The only problem are the pests. You see, most places have mice or mosquitoes. We have dragons." And like those words just really you know nothing. You literally know nothing. But just the words of we're a few days north of Hopeless, we're a few degrees south of freezing to death, located solidly on the meridian of misery. Like just those words, like you know nothing. You even get no like real like visual, but you get a sense of the setting, right? Like, I think it's one of the, like, most beautiful
Yeah,
ways to set a setting.
it sets the mood beautifully, right? It sets the mood. So like what you know so far is that there are going to be dragons because you bought a ticket for a movie called How to Train Your Dragon,
I mean, fair. Yes, yes,
right?
absolutely. But
So
you
at this
also get a sense of, like, this is not an island people wanna be on. It's terrible weather. Um, but also the setting, the fact that you've been there 7 generations, but every single building is new. And, like, that I think is a perfect example of how you're treating the setting like a character. I
It's
don't
a
know if that makes
beautiful
sense.
description. Well, no, but it's a beautiful description, right? Because, because sometimes the things that are so sometimes like so my character Charlie, right? So there's an aspect of her character where she always wears a white suit. She's blonde haired. She's very fair skinned. So her hairs are very curly, right? Because she's based on my poodle, my little tiny toy poodle, right? She's short of stature, right? And so like her physical description is a little bit like how the outside world is gonna underestimate this diminutive person, right? So, like, there's kind of like this point about this. But for the
Man,
most part,
I write diminutive, like, female characters too.
and I
Sorry,
love
that's
her.
just funny.
But like, so there's a lot of description in there. But the thing that is important about her is her razor sharp wit, and so like her description for the people who love her, they're like, "Oh." Like, if you've read her before, you're like, "Oh, this is why everybody, underestimates her, yay." And, like, the your first read through, you're like, "Oh, like, this is a little bit interesting. What is such a tiny, like, frail person doing as a police detective?" Right? It's kind of that juxtaposition, and so, like, it's kind of like this intriguing thing. And I think that description of the setting is exactly the same as, like, a kind of a character, and yet there isn't any physical description, and a lot of my characters, I don't do a lot of physical description with them because it's not the important part about them. Their mood, whether or not they have, honesty or integrity or, something else about them, is really, really important, and so we're letting people, like, kind of build in their imaginations what they think it's gonna be like, but, like, the things that I wanna. You're right, that's an absolutely beautiful, opening. And for those of you who don't remember, the first sentence or the first paragraph is all about the setting in the big intersection, right? It is set in a valley in the Blue Ridge Mountains, right? And it's like the first sentence, like stretching langoriously through a valley in the Blue Ridge Mountains, following the banks of a river, the small city of Blue Ash quietly bustled around the college, the pulp mill, and an old furniture factory turned tourist trap. This is like I'm telling you everything that's important about the city. Like it's a small city, but it's like it's grown and stretched along the valley. And so like, like that setting is there and it's in the mountains and it's like it's contained geography and it's a small city, but it kind of maybe I go on to say it had never given a fig what the outside world thought of it, right? It's insular. So like I have given you what you need to know about this. And so like my protagonist lives within this world. So
Yeah,
like
and when it comes to, like, things like shutdown syntax, like, the like, I do tend to be more, like, character focused, so, I tend to start things with, like, dialogue and, like, in the middle of action and whatever, but, like, the the way that I thought about, like, for example, shutdown syntax, because, like, it did start out from a fanfic, as a lot of my things do, is that, like, I leaned into, like, taking the setting that was in, like, let's say, like, my fanfic, but, like, expanding it in a way and being like, "Well, what really am I looking at here?" Because, like, the idea is that in this case, right, it's a sci-fi world where, like, relatively not far off from, like, where we currently are. So it's, like, near sci-fi as opposed to, like, space opera, Star Wars, Star Trek type sci-fi, right? So,
well,
like
it reads a little bit futuristic, but like
right.
not so far in the future that you can't imagine it.
Right, because you're still, like, surrounded by relatively, like, a city, like, let's say not like Chicago, let's say, like, more like New York or whatever, but, like, older buildings, right? But you're retrofitting things with technology and then retrofitting things with new technology, right? Like, so it's the layer upon layer. Um, it's you've got old, like, warehouse docks and stuff, but then you've got machinery there, but coming from an engineering background, knowing that if you're on an ocean, salt water is incredibly corrosive. So, like, for all you try to do, in my setting, I'm like, but like, if we've got machinery right there, machinery breaks down so fast with salt water. Like, really, they're still kind of working around the human schedule because they need so many people there to still maintain the stuff, right? So I felt like it was still like relatively near future enough. Like it's not like I said, it's not like Star Trek, right? Like yeah, you're saying it's future, but like Star Trek future, not like up in space, like
Like Star Trek or Babylon 5 or,
right or
something like that.
Battlestar
Right.
Galactica or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe a
so
little bit more Stargate-y, like set current-ish times, but with advanced technology,
right,
mysterious.
and so, like, when I'm building my world around that, right, like, I'm coming at it partially from an engineer's perspective because I am an engineer, um, and partially from my, like, understanding of large cities, but, like, I'm it's one of those things when, like, I think when people, like, build a world and you're right, like or Brandon Sanderson's right, like, I feel like people don't take enough risks, but it also depends on the story you're trying to tell, right? Like, and how well you can imagine those wildly different settings. But does it need to be wildly different for it to be impactful? Is, kind of like a consideration too when you're a writer.
Yeah. So in the Charlie series, a new book drops May 15th, called Hero's Daughter. This is a little bit Charlie, she's based on my poodle, but she's also from the South, like me. Although she's a very young character, and she's looking around at like how she's grown up in a city in the South, and she's now moved to small town. Um, Illinois, right? Like a fictitious version of basically the county that I'm living
Mhm.
in. And like how that's different. And in Charlotte, this is where I've forgotten that was in How to Train Your Dragon. But but the thing is, it's like, when it's like all the buildings are new, that is Charlotte. That is like basically Charlotte. Charlotte has been growing and growing and growing since I don't, at least since my parents moved there when I was 3 years old. right? And I mean, like that was a joke growing up, right? If the building was more than 20 years old, it had to be torn down and something new had to be put in its place. And nothing was more than 20 years old. And I mean, yeah, there's a few churches, that stood, because of that sentimental, but like honestly, like it's been growing and growing so fast and growing in such different ways that just keep stacking and stacking, and they're like just always new things. And one of my friends had on there like RIP old Charlotte, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and like I'm checking. I went through and I checked, and it was his memory of all the places that he had been to that he loved that were gone, right? And like of course there were new things in their place, but I was like, oh, I was there, I was there, I was there, I was there. But like they're gone. And how here that is very different. These villages really wanted to cling on to their heritage, and maybe a little bit, some of them did, and some of that has been maybe at their expense, and then some of them are like, no, no, new stuff, because like Deerfield is very new. Buffalo Grove is very new. I don't know name people near you.
I mean, Glen Ellen has, like, a lot of older stuff, but then you come into, like, well, first of all, I think it depends on, like, the affluence of the area, right? Because, like, if you're talking about, like, Glen Ellen is very affluent, but then you're talking about, like, I'm in Glendale Heights technically, and, like, that's not as affluent. So, like, say the mall here just closed, and the mall had opened up in the '80s when right before I was born, I think. And they just knocked it down so that they could, because, malls are a dying breed, essentially, like what we thought of as a shopping mall. And so now they're like going to be renovating that area into like an outdoor entertainment.
Amazon put malls out of business.
I don't know. Yeah, well, and like online shopping, but also like it's interesting, right? Because like when it comes to settings, tying it back into the settings, like if you're writing something modern day and you had something like a shopping mall in the future, like I know you have like trading outposts, let's say, like if like if I'm watching, because I was watching Star Wars because it was just Star Wars Day. And you have like trading posts, like that is essentially like akin to a mall. And it makes sense like in that setting. But let's say you're in like my shutdown syntax world and like they go to like a shopping mall. Does that really make sense? Because like nowadays you see that that is like being phased out. But where do teens hang out now? Because it's very interesting. Like in real life, with the mall
My
being
son goes
closed
to the
and
mall.
other malls like putting in curfews into place, teens are ransacking like Target at night as the hangout spot.
That's such a my son goes to the mall, but just so you know. Like, we have
Well,
a mall
but
here.
that's because you still have one, but we've just torn ours down, right? So like it's interesting when it comes to like A, lived experiences, but B, what is the norm? Like as it changes, it's very interesting, right? Because then if you're writing something, like do you incorporate that into your setting or whatever? You know what I mean?
I do, I think, and I do think that I do think that that's, one of the things that I think about, right? And so, like, one of the main things, well, it's not in this. I don't know why I'm opening this. It's much later on in the book, right? But like, there are places like to give that city, like the city that like that kind of grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, which there are several of them that grew basically around a really large university. I'm thinking Asheville. I'm thinking Knoxville. I'm thinking a little bit Charleston, West Virginia. And, they brought the intellect in there. They wanted in the Blue Ridge Mountain. There were all of these teaching colleges that popped up in the I guess 1880s, 1890s, um, because they were trying to get rural America, more better teachers, right? And they wanted to give basically the women who were there, who were not interested in getting married, an opportunity to improve their lives. And so, it brought in people from the location. So, like these teaching colleges grew up and they some of them became really great institutions, and some of them became institutions. Um, you know, so I am a little bit familiar with all of those. So yeah, so it's a fascinating thing, and it was a way for me to talk about this place that wanted to hold on to what it was, but also wanted to embrace growth and how that struggle kind of goes back and forth. That's for Blue Ash. And I went to college in one of those teaching colleges, although I didn't study teaching there.
Mhm.
And it was becoming a bigger institution. So like it was just fairly interesting.
So, out of curiosity, what type of research do you do when you're working on your setting, right? Because, like, there's a lot of, like, world building and, like, I've talked about this in the writing journey before that, even if you're utilizing a real world place, right? Like, let's say you're using Chicago or you're using New York or you're using whatever, like, there is a lot of research that still needs to go into it, right? And you still need to essentially build that world, even if it's a known place, because if you don't, you run into um, the Dresden Files effect, right? Where they set it in Chicago, but it is clearly if you're from Chicago and you read it, it's not very Chicago, right?
Yeah,
Like,
what? Okay, so I don't have any of these books here. Gosh,
the
walking dogs.
dogs. It's all
Yeah,
the
it's
dogs.
walking dogs past my townhouse today. They're like, oh, it's pretty. Um, so I think Michael Conley does a really. So I put what I call vibe research in, right? So like I look at things. I drive around and I look at tons of places. So I do some research into like the economics of an area, what is really true about that area, right? So like when I had the idea for Blue Ash, I was living in North Carolina. Um I set Allison in a particular spot. She was in college at the time, right?
Mhm.
And so I had these ideas. So I put some research into the colleges. When I picked up the character 15 years later, although it's 20 years later in the character's life, it was 15 years later for me. Um, I had to put some research into like what would Blue Ash have become after all of these years? You know, like what is driving that particular thing, right? So that is where the old furniture factories from tourist trap. When I was going to school, furniture factories littered the Blue Ridge Mountains, and there was tons of just beautiful furniture that was built there, right? Like there's cities like Lenore and Hickory just had tons of these furniture. They didn't just have the manufacturers, they had outlets. They had all these places that you could just go. My dad 20 years ago built his house. His dining room table, which I would when my mom passes, I would love to own. I don't own a house where I could put the table, but that's beside the point. Shh. Um, it was so like a company had ordered this from this furniture company to be their conference table. And then they reneged on the order. So like here they had built this entirely huge, expandable table. It was gorgeous. It was polished. It's in like all the finishings or whatever. My dad picked it up half price. For because like they just couldn't get rid of it. Nobody wanted something that big. And the chairs that went with it. And my dad just got this really beautiful set for next to nothing because like they weren't going to do it. They threw the chairs in for free. Like it was different. Like they hadn't ordered the chairs yet. I guess they were going to use like some sort of corporate chair or whatever. Done not from them, so they'd order just the tables. And basically, Dad got it half price in the chairs for free. Or that's my memory of it. Don't quote me. Um, I wasn't living in his house then. I had my own kids. Um, but yeah, so that's where the furniture factory came from, right? It's like I knew that those places had been shutting down, right? And I knew that tourism was becoming bigger, right? So like there are places like zip lines. There are places like there are there are guided hikes. There were no guided hikes when I went there. You had to find the dang trail yourself. You had to know. You had to go get your dang book and you had to go find that thing and you had to park your car on the side of the road and you had to hope the cops didn't come tow it away while you were hiking to the dang waterfall. There were no it was an adventure. Right now, people use guides. I mean, like, so it's crazy. But that also tells you people that I could put into the setting that are going to be totally normal and natural there.
Mhm.
And the kind of things that they saw, like, do they have a cafe? Do they have chintzy, pottery that looks weird or whatever?
Right.
That's the other thing. That's what's going to drive the economy is outside. And that does come into play. Don't know if it comes into play at the end of this. This could be a thing.
But have you had to do, like, other research too, like online research or books or whatever? Because it's very interesting, like, talking especially to, like, newer writers and, like, A, not thinking about the fact that they need to do research even if it's a real place, and B, I know, like, before Nana went away, that one of the biggest things was that, like, when we would do, like, prep workshops, people would be like, "Well, how do you research?" You know,
So
like
I don't do as much reading, like reading about the history of a I don't do as much reading about a history of a place. The kind of research that I do would be exactly the same as if I'm doing a setting, if I was opening a business there,
mhm,
right?
okay.
So I choose something that is going to be because my settings are typically made up, right? So I'm going to choose a parallel zip code and I'm going to research what is in that zip code. What is the median income? What is the surrounding areas? What is the driving force, right? Like, so in the Charlie Snow book, she sat in Red Lake Villa from my town, which is approximately halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee. Oh, where are we at? Halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee, a little bit to the west, right? So like I look at that. So like what kind of, and I don't just do what I have here, right? Like here, like what I see. I not just that. I do all of that kind of research. So like, what kind of business is going to thrive here, right? What kind of business is not thriving here? What businesses were here in the past? Right? It's not enough for me to go and say like, "Oh, was that a Lowe's?" Like, I need to do that research. I need to know it. Because even if it's not the same brand of big box store, were there big box stores? Were the stores smaller? How was it done? Like to give that flavor, right? And then there's a little bit on the geography and the history, but I do those pretty quickly. I like to go through back issues of local newspapers,
Oh, okay.
to read some stuff for that sometimes. You know, admittedly, that's more fun for the Asheville and Hendersonville newspapers, where like just to see like what the kind of gossip was. But I did do research into like what those newspapers did because Allison wanted to be a reporter. So I do put these research in, but it's more like um that's what I studied in college was how to start a business. So all of that research goes in there, and then I use that to build a vibrant. What does that look like? So like I go and use my eyes. Don't rely on photos. I go and use my eyes. I go kind of like smell what those smells are going to be, and then I take everything and I kind of synthesize that together to figure out who and who are my characters.
Yeah.
Like every once in a while, that like if you can find a back um in your language, in a language you understand, it doesn't have to be translated, that maybe one of the best things to read is like some of those I'm sorry, citizen profiles, right? The slice of life stories that they go, the human interest stories that are
Mhm,
out like, oh, so and so did this amazing thing. Well, who is so and so? What did they do? Why is it amazing? And why are they so colorful? Right. And you can see all these colorful people. And if you go back far enough to get society news, we're no longer a society that does society news, right? So
right.
we don't talk about La 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 Gala and who went there and why it is the social event of the year. Nobody cares. Like we care less about these everyday things.
Well, but, like, I guess, like, in that vein, like, but is there a way that like, there's social media now, or there's, like, like, so if you have, like, a character who's really rich, like, that stuff is still actually relevant, right? Like, there are still galas and there's, like, like
Yeah, well, so the death of local journalism, it does that. So like if you have the gala and it's out there, you're gonna go to that gala. Like you need to know what that gala is, right? So
yeah.
we are we do a couple of galas a year. My husband is a elected school board member, right? And the school board gets elected to not elected, they get invited to a couple of galas a year for people that they promote, right? So like if I'm gonna set it in modern times, then what's up on that Facebook page? What do they put up on their website, on the Facebook page? How much do they show and who was there and who do they think to tag? Those things are still relevant. Social
Mhm.
media is where that's at, right? But there
Right,
isn't a beautiful write-up as to what it is. Like the
right.
reader on social media, you have to make up your own mind, right? Like when it was when they sent a reporter to these things to stand out there and to watch the people come in, what you wore, like were you gonna wear something that was gonna get mentioned and was it gonna get mentioned positively or negatively? And
Actually, just
whereas
like how the Met Gala just occurred, didn't it?
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, the Met Gala is, like, now more famous than it was when you or I were growing up.
Yeah.
Not that it wasn't famous, it was famous. They had, beautiful photos that came out every year, but there were, like, Christmas galas in Charlotte or
Yeah.
wherever, and, like, they would talk about, like, who showed up at the country club and what country club held it and what they did and what the charity benefit was for and who wore what to there and where they bought it from, right? And so I would
Actually,
notice
interestingly, like, Jennifer Lynn Barnes is, the Hawthorne Brothers trilogy, and then I think there's, like, 4 or 5 books now or whatever. Like, because it deals with, like, rich people in the South, like, it has, like, a lot of stuff like that. But it's interesting, right? Because it's that more modern day take on those things where you don't have, right, like, that same kind of journalism, but you have still, like, that word of mouth, and you have, like it's interesting because lately, like, I've been working on a side, like you know me, I get distracted and I start writing other um, and so I've been writing like it's gonna be like a love story type thing, but it's gonna be set in like relatively modern time, similar to anime. So like relatively modern times, but like demon slaying. Anyways, just go with it. Just go with it. Okay. And anyway, so I've been doing like a lot of research because I do have it currently set in Japan. So right, like that's not some place I could just go down the street and like
totally, just get your passport out, take a flight, your husband and kids can live without you,
yes,
go
I
to
would love
the
to do that. I've never been to Japan. But like, there's me like going through like, okay, like what city would make sense? I'm like, I settled on Kyoto because I was like, oh, I thought it was really cool. There's like this research center. I was like, what if? And like, again, this is because it's, a fantasy version of it. Like, what if that research center closed? And what if there was like a military operation here because it's like a place where demons are like coming out and like getting into like the population and stuff. And so, there's like a lot of different research, right? Because I'm setting something in a different country, right? So, like, I'm looking at Google Maps. I'm like doing the street view and like following the street view around in like
that's always
Kyoto and stuff,
I
right? Like,
I don't consider that research, but you're right, it's research. I
it
don't
is
consider
research,
it,
though.
but it is research. I just consider it messing around with my loci, but whatever.
Well, but like, I guess if you're like thinking about it, like, I had to do the same thing for like Darkspell, right? Because it's set in like Edinburgh. Um, I'm not there. I would love to expensive trip out to Edinburgh too, I mean, it'd be great. I don't have that money. Um, but it's also like researching like not just like the locations, right? But like the world building that goes around it is also like what your character like you've said, like what your characters are interacting with. But when you're talking about a place that you're not able to go to, obviously, there are some leaps that you have to make, but you also have to think about how, I guess, fantastical it'll be, and that's right, the difference between you and me is because I do tend towards writing fantasy. So I can fudge and change things, and it's just part of the world, right? Like, this research center is a real research center, but in my fantasy version of Kyoto, it has gone defunct because of all this other stuff, and now it's, like, military research. Like, it was like a research for humanities, like originally. And it comes up, like, in, like, the current opening of this
Do you
not
watch
exist novel.
because what I do is, like, I would watch movies or Netflix series that were based on, like, things that were based, like, over time, and that, like,
Yeah,
so if I've never been to London, right? I don't really have any interest in Paris, although I watch a lot of stuff from Paris, but, like, London probably a little bit more so, right, and there's a lot of stuff that is filmed on the streets of London. What does London look
yeah.
like? And you see London through the eyes of that director, right? And so, like, I try to watch several different directors take on what London is so that I kind of synthesize my own if I were to set it in, say, London.
I mean, I think it depends. Well, it again depends on, I think, genre, right? Because, like, if I'm doing fantasy, demon slaying and whatever, like, the everyday life of maybe Kyoto citizens don't need to be at the forefront because the story isn't about them, and you're not gonna see them. You're gonna see the people fighting demons in this, like, and where it is actually the edge of, like, forests and mountains and stuff, so, like, I don't have to be in Kyoto proper, right? Like, does that make sense?
It does. And
So then it doesn't it that has less of a bearing on my story, but it's also me understanding I don't need that information, right? Because it's not going to affect me.
So I did this romance, which nobody's ever gonna read because I'm not done with it yet.
Yeah.
But no, like every time I'm between projects and I don't know what to write, I go add a couple more scenes to it, and like I don't think this thing is ever gonna die. I just
Ask
love
me
the
how
idea.
many works in progress I have. I am releasing some of my short stories soon so that I have them for Gray's Lake in a paperback format. And I'm sitting here and I wrote little blurbs about two of them because well, about all of them. But two of them are based off of novels not published yet.
Yeah, I know, right? So like that's crazy talk. Okay. So I said it in New York and Charleston, right? So at the time I had never been to New York when I started it. I have since been to New York, right? But I had been to Charleston before, but I had to like do some refreshers in Charleston. What are some touristy things to do in Charleston? That just sounds like a cool thing, right? Like so if you have somebody who flies in from New York, um and I will just give you this, this is totally not you're never gonna well, you're welcome to read it if you want to read it. I'm just telling you it's not what you read because it is very small.
Oh,
Um,
you know me. I'm not that way.
it's not
Yeah.
that small. But, like, so I had this idea, right? Like, so I was cooking dinner one night. We talk about how many inspirations come from like real world, right? And I'm cooking dinner one night and I heard that I'd left the TV on upstairs. So I come running up the stairs and a TV lawyer, is talking about something and he's like, I have read this report and this is not what's on. I'm so like, oh, darling, that thing is not going to love you back. And I was like, oh, that's a smutty, smutty book. Like snarky novelist meets know-it-all lawyer, like, and sparks fly. Like there's just nothing else there, right? And so I was like, so what would it mean for those 2 characters to fall in love? And, like, is it just a physical thing? And like, and I'm exploring this idea. And of course, if he lives in New York where his TV studio is, and she's from Charleston where she's grown up and what would he want to show her about New York? And so like I did some research into the New York City park. I think it's the city park. But into parks in New York City, not the touristy ones that everybody goes to, but like maybe something that would be cool that like you would really enjoy, but nobody like you're not going to go as a tourist. And where would that be? And could she get there from here? Like, would it be simple enough? It was hard to find a park like that to have
Yes.
like this cute setting where like, what time of year is it? And like, what would be a cool thing? And like, but I put quite a bit of research into it. And like, just to mention that the park is there. And I know people who aren't from New York are going to take creative leaps, but like, I would hope like if it ever got released and somebody read it, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I this is totally a place that I can relate to." So yeah, so like it was fun. And then there are just things that you do in Charleston that are kind of a little bit touristy that maybe you don't do every day, but if you want somebody who's coming in to come see, like the fun thing to go do. So I put quite a bit of research into that too. So I do.
Okay. I'm not gonna lie. I'm out
You're
of
out of
cheese.
cheese?
How
I
are
have
you
one.
doing? You
I
have
have
one
one
sip
sip.
left. Should we figure out like let's I don't know, like our best tips for doing settings or
Yeah, I would say like my 3 best tips for settings are 1, they are if you do them properly, they're as much a character as any character in your novel. Like think of them as your protagonist and antagonist all rolled into one, right? So it should have charm and things that you're going to love about them and you really want to root for that place, right? But it should also provide obstacles and things that just really just drive them crazy. So they can be a source of love and a source of friction, right? So protagonist and antagonist in one. Read descriptions of the place that you're going to research, right? And like get a feel for like how other people describe the mood so that you can like incorporate that mood into it. And thirdly, do not to be afraid to just wing it, to just
yeah.
freaking budget, right? It's fiction. That's the whole point of fiction is like it needs to be realistic, but it doesn't have to be real.
Yeah. I would say like a couple of things that I have run into that I think are some of like the things that I didn't think of at first when I'm doing any world building is like A, drawing a map. Like understanding like if it's a fictional I have heard actually some of the best world building. I don't remember the series. I would have to look it up. But somebody had said like there was this romance series and it was set in like a fictional town, but it felt so real and you could draw maps from like basically the descriptions, but it was like some of the best world building is just drawing. Like you do not have to have good drawing skills, but just draw a map, know where things are so that you know how far things are. Like when I'm working on like Triton Sanctuary is one of my fantasy novels that is not out, but I have short stories that I've released here on Substack and are going to be in my new thing, is I actually have a map in Procreate that I hand drew because I was getting too frustrated with other map making programs. But to understand, like, here's the, here's like the slums, here's the rich part, here's the merchants, here's the naval, here's the like one guy, he's like super rich and he like he's got like a huge estate, but it's on the other side away from all the other rich people and stuff. And he has access to like the ocean because they're an oceanfront, like, but they're also they're like, the city itself is like isolated by mountains, right? So like I drew the mountains and there's like a pass. Well, then the pass at one point gets like blocked and stuff. So they're really cut off from the rest of the country for a while. Like drawing that map is like honestly like one of the best things. And if it's a real life place, just having copies of the map. Like I use Scrivener so that I can have it right there and I put like screenshots of like my maps and stuff. So like I know like in this other one I'm working on, like it's in Kyoto, like here's the research center. Here's this long road that comes off of like a main road. And like one of my main characters is walking along that road because he opted to walk to school instead of like, like it's those things, right? Like, it's like knowing where those things are is good, no matter if you're writing romance, if you're writing mystery, if you're writing fantasy, if you're writing sci-fi, like, it doesn't matter, like, knowing where things are. So, like, that was all number 1. 2, different seasons or day and night. Like, how things change is really important, from day to night, from season to season, if you are multiple seasons. My one fantasy, series or book that, again, unreleased, I'm still working on it, but I have short stories out for, um, some of it takes place in the town of Neverdrift, and, like, having to think about, like, okay, like, I have a short story that was talking about how the seasons were changing. They were going from winter to spring, and merchants were just starting to travel again and come into the town, and how that changes the town. Because, like, the one of my other characters, she, like, hunts, but now she's, like, competing with other people who are maybe hunting on the land that she would normally hunt on, right? Like, and how they butt heads. Um, and number 3, would definitely be, like, and I've said this to a lot of people before and they don't think about it, is researching at libraries and stuff and knowing that you can go find, like, either research papers, there are, like,
The
different, like,
demographics data.
nationalities too. So, like, somebody last year 2 years ago, I think, was wanting to write something about Chinese people in Chicago, and, like, I was like, "Oh, I think you can go down into Chinatown and, like, there are certain, like, organizations that will help you." Like, they have, like, research available that you could, access and stuff. Um, they're fantastic. Like,
That's
there's,
what
like, so many things
if
like that.
you need something like that, go to your reference desk, ask your local library. They will know where to find something to research for you. This is what librarians do. Like they are fantastic at locating, well, research librarians. This is what
Yeah.
they are fantastic at. It's like finding the things that you didn't know you needed to know. They're like, "Oh, did you need to know about this? I can this they have master's degrees in how to find information for these random things the public wants." They're amazing
Also,
people.
I think because, I think you can go to in Illinois at least, and if you're watching this outside of Illinois, I don't know about your state, I'm just talking about Illinois. You can go to your local college or community college, either one, I think. And if you are in their district, they can look up like research papers for free and other stuff like that that you may not be able to get at like your local regular public library, which is
So
like,
yeah.
amazing. But people don't think about that necessarily. Because we have gotten so used to just, you just Google things and, it is like
Use
knowing
Scholar.
if the
Yeah, use
Google results. Sorry.
Google, yeah, use Google Scholar as well. That will give you research papers that are on whatever it is that you want to do. So not just regular Google, Google Scholar, and it's just a database of research papers and see what's available there for free. And then if it's not available for free, go ask your public library or local, if you have access to
College
it.
or something, yeah.
There's a way to find the information. There are people out there, who can do it, like you said, institutions in Chinatown or,
Or
there's
like in
several.
the city or something, like if you're researching something about the city itself, like I know we only said 3, but number 4 is also just like how I have character sketches, just having like a setting sketch where I put on my notes.
Yeah, that's really great.
Down your notes.
Yeah, all of which we have both used. So yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm
So
out
if
of
you're
tea.
writing, I'm out of tea as well.
But
If you
also
are
look,
reading,
look, look, it's One Piece.
I know my kids love One Piece. She loves One Piece. Like
It was important. I had to show you that it was One Piece. I also have my D&D Mind Flayer shirt on today, so you know.
oh nice. I am dressed in my son's wear, so like I guess I have to stand up. So it's his volleyball team.
Nice.
Yep. Got a huge volleyball. So yeah, all right. So all right. Well,
So we'll be back in 2 weeks.
in theory, in
That is
theory.
the last week of school. I will probably be losing my mind, because my 5th grader is
Well, that means
graduating. I will be a hot mess that week. It will be his
I
last
did not.
year.
I'm just gonna say I did not feel it for the first 2, but when my youngest, my son, graduated from 5th grade, all the tears, just all the tears. I was like,
No,
oh,
no, I'm a crier. I'm gonna be a wreck. Also, we are losing our principal and assistant principal. I will be a wreck because of that, because they are amazing, and I'm so sad that they are leaving our district. I warn you, in 2 weeks, assuming I am here because things have not gone crazy for Maysember, I may be a wreck. I may just be a hot mess.
that means Ansley will be doing all the research for us.
I told you, I think next time we should do Why the Dumbass Trio is the perfect number of main
Yeah,
characters.
I totally agree with you. I was like, but how many do I remember off the top of my head? And
Harry Potter.
yeah, Harry Potter, the Three Stooges. But here's the thing that I'm thinking of.
No, but like
Uh,
Buffy. Think about Buffy.
Buffy, but here's the thing. I'm going to make an argument in favor of Psych being a trio, although that's really more of a quartet. But it's like it's a rotating
Well,
trio.
we'll discuss
But
it offline to figure out our examples, but I think it'll be a good I think in 2 weeks, I think Dumbass Trios is where we go.
yeah,
Also because I love saying Dumbass Trio.
or just
Every time I watch a show, I'm like, "Oh my god, look at that Dumbass Trio." And I don't
yeah.
remember what we were watching. I was watching something and I'm like, "Oh, I think I was." I don't remember if it was Star Wars, but I'm like, "Oh my god, look, they have a Dumbass Trio."
Well, Star Wars does, right? That's Luke and Leia and Han.
Well, I was watching the prequels because I also love the prequels, but you got Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme. Come on, they're the Dumbass Trio too.
Yeah, I mean, so like, yeah. So we'll have like a whole list of them. That'll be next time. Okay.
Yes, Dumbass Trios. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, we'll do it.
I'm sorry, I have so many anime like things with it too. So I'm like,
We'll talk about it. Okay. And I need something fun and light like this because what I'm reading now is currently true crime on serial killers. So
see, I always want to read that kind of stuff, and then it makes me sad and whatever. But then again, I'm reading a fantasy novel, and I'm like, this is hitting a little too close to home with what's going on right now in our world. So,
it's
anyways, we will see you all later.
enjoy. All right.
Thank you for joining us. We'll be back in 2
Thank you.
weeks.
Be back. Bye.
Bye.